Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Rundown. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, and I will be kind of guiding you through today's discussion. And as you noticed, Mike Piwowarski's gotten a lot handsomer. Okay, maybe not, but
Well, thanks a lot, Craig. I appreciate that.
but hey, what we do have is a good friend of the show, of the program, one of the co-hosts for Arms Room Radio, Major Bill. Bill, how are we doing today?
Doing great here in sunny South Florida, except for the rising gas and ammo prices. You know, it's the gunshine state.
Such is life in Biden's America, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. See, more of my tax dollars go out the window.
Exactly. So, now, unfortunately, Mike wasn't able to be on the program today, so he has volunteered Major Bill to be here in his stead. So we're going to have to
Yes.
find a way to get along without the bourbon today. But
Well, you know that's the problem. Everybody who knows Mike knows that he's a cavalry and armor officer, and allegedly last night he had a drink of something that was non-alcoholic and had a very bad reaction and ended up in the hospital. So we wish him the best. If he gets that get some blood into his alcohol stream or alcohol into his bloodstream, and he starts feeling better.
yes, we're praying for you, Mike, and looking forward to having you back on the program tomorrow. All right, so hey, let's go ahead and let's get into today's news. All right. Well, you guys all know what the big news, obviously, of the last I don't know how long has been, and that's largely been the trial of Derek Chauvin, who's been convicted of murder in the second degree, murder in the third degree, and second degree manslaughter, I believe. Well, now there is now he and the three other officers have actually been brought up on federal charges. So just when we thought it was all handled and justice was done, well, it looks like we're going to be hanging on to this as a news story for a little while.
Yes, we are, and we've seen this become more and more commonplace over the years, the decades. This really came to light after the LAPD shootings of Rodney King. You started to see the Justice Department becoming more and more involved in the civil rights side of things and how they are monitoring those cases. And if they're not going to get you one way, they're going to get you another.
Now, what's interesting about this is kind of twofold. Number one was there are rumors, or at least not rumors, it's been noted that they were actually prepared, federal agents were actually prepared to arrest Derek Chauvin after the trial had he not been convicted of the local charges. Do you know if any of that? I mean, from what I saw, it's been reported to you, but do you know anything about any of that?
I have also heard it reported. I don't know if it's true, but in today's climate, I would, in my administrative position, they would not surprise me, especially with the amount of civil unrest that they've had up there, and they've had a couple. They had at least one shooting, officer involved shooting, during the trial, about 10 miles away, and in order to keep the peace, if they have charges, they were going to go ahead and make the arrest. I think it was more of a political move. If it came to that, usually you're going to see more of an indictment come out rather than an arrest. But I'm sure it was planned.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it at all. And the other thing that I've noticed is I don't recall many, if any, of these charges ever really sticking at the federal level. At least most places they haven't even bothered to bring them. And then when they have bothered to bring them, for the most part, I haven't seen any where anyone's really ever been convicted of any such charges.
No, and the bar is very, very high for conviction. You have to show the malice. You have to show the intent. That was what you were planning on doing, was depriving them of their civil liberties. And so it's easy to charge. You can bring the probable cause. before a judge. And again, the indictment is only one side of things. So that's why we have the trial. But you are correct. The convictions are a very low percentage because it is so difficult to show that intent unless there's just something so blatant, especially now with body cameras and the ability to record the officer's interactions with the subject. I think we're going to see that go lower, but I think we're going to see arrests for civil rights violations increase on officer involved shootings.
And it'll be interesting to see how those convictions go, because the might or those cases go, if there are convictions. When I say how convictions go, what percentage actually wind ending convictions? Because I got to believe, one, you're going to see really low percentage, but the other issue is going to be is if these officers are not found guilty of federal charges, do we potentially open up the door for more rioting? Because we know, fortunately, some of these folks aren't. All they need is an excuse, and a lot of times, maybe not even that.
No, I think this was done or it was planned to prevent something like that, which is understandable on the administrative side. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with it. I think it would have, if we didn't have what we have going on today, it would have been an indictment. And they would have appeared in court rather than a physical arrest. Right. But understanding the climate that we're operating in, understanding that you are now seeing states move to remove qualified immunity from police officers. You have the big one with the NYPD, Colorado, Virginia's looking at it. There's a couple other states. And a lot of people don't understand really what the qualified immunity is about. And we're getting false information out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, ain't that the truth? That is definitely the truth. Well, hey, moving on to our next story. Now, there is a lot of conversation. There's a lot of conversation right now in the country regarding race, racial equality, or the new word instead of equality is actually equity. There's a lot of talk out there about critical race theory. And so you have a lot of pressure on whether it's municipalities or it's businesses or entertainment to push this idea that we live in a racist country run by and dominated by white supremacy. Well, the president and CEO of Basecamp, a relatively large tech company, basically rejected that in a blog post that he had sent out, they had posted that he didn't believe that we lived in a racist society. He didn't believe that this is a culture or a country run by white supremacists. And as a result of that, one of the things he also did was he didn't want their company platform, any of the internal communication stuff within their company, to be used for discussions about social issues and a lot of this stuff. And as a result, up to a third of his employees decided to quit working for the company simply because they disagreed with his political his take on whether or not America is a racist country.
Well, and that's the great thing about being in America. If you don't agree with something, nobody's forcing you to stay there. This isn't, the Soviet Union where you're going to be making widgets for the rest of your life, and it's decided when you're a child of what kind of job you're going to have. It's his right. It's his company. And where if you have people who disagree with a thought process, it's not the days of when I was in high school and I took debate and we learned about Robert's Rules of Order and we learned about having social and civil discourse, but having it objectively, having it in a format where we can exchange ideas, exchange views, not necessarily agree, and we move on with our lives. Now, with the idea of cancel culture, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. And to put that out there and try to destroy a company because the employees don't agree with what one of the co-founders says, I don't understand it. I really don't.
Well, the thing to come to know and realize about this is, first of all, understanding that critical race theory's foundation really comes from postmodernism, and part of postmodernism is part of it is, and even when you go back and you look at Marxism, You cannot allow dissent. There is no discussion. There is no debate. They've taken what is a theory and it has now gone from theory to irrefutable fact. And if you deny it, if you not even deny it, if you question it, you are automatically denounced, you are automatically shouted down, you are automatically canceled. Because you cannot challenge the orthodoxy. And that's what it is. It's like a religion. It's an orthodoxy. You don't have to prove it. You adopt it as a part of the faith.
Yes, and it's the blind obedience. And we saw this coming about, Craig, where you and I were young men with climate change. We saw it back in the early '80s, where the world's heating up, and we're the ones who are responsible for it, and we need to change. Uh, and there's been scientific studies that have proven otherwise, that we go through these different cycles. I remember being a kid in the '70s saying that we were heading for a cold time again, and that the possibility of having another ice age was upon us. So if you don't believe in what is being espoused by one side or another, they're going to yell it, they're going to scream it, they're going to talk it down
Yep,
until you are drowned out. And that's why it's
exactly.
important that every side has a voice.
100% exactly. The point behind previously, before this whole critical race or social justice scholarship, there used to be this idea that you put a theory out there and it's rigorously debated. That theory then has to also stand up to some sort of scrutiny. You have to be able to apply data and facts and studies that will do where you can either prove or disprove the theory. But now it's like, no, we don't do that because, well, see, understanding that here's the thing. See, math and science and reason are all constructs of the dominant white racist society in their eyes. So therefore, it can't be trusted. Therefore, we can't apply it to anything. You just have to take the experiential word of people of color, and even then, it can only be those experiences that fall in line with the orthodoxy.
Yes, yes. And if you've been following along with Common Core math, we all know that 7 plus tree equals purple, but only if you carry the squirrel.
Exactly. Go ahead, new math. New math will get you every time.
Yes.
Oh, speaking of new math. Now, I know that a lot of people in the gun community, when we were talking about bump stocks and we were talking about President Trump and the ATF and rewriting rules and redefinitions in order to be able to ban bump stocks without having to go through the legislative process, a lot of people said, well, we don't care about bump stocks. I don't have a bump stock. I don't own a bump stock. I don't need a bump stock. Especially nowadays for me, ammo's too darn expensive to be to be firing them off using a bump stock. But what we said at the time was that if we allow this president at that time, that president, to utilize the rules making system in order to ban an item that we did not care about, eventually we would be called on. Eventually, either that president or a different president would actually then utilize the rulemaking system to ban items that we do eventually care about. Well, guess what? At the request of President Biden, the ATF has started proposing and started working on rules that are going to go after items that we do care about. Rules, for example, on 80% lowers, on suppressors, and rules that would make AR uppers serialized firearms. Now, Major Bill, just give me an idea of just how crazy or just how off bad some of these proposals are.
Well, first off, you have to look at what laws are already on the books. We already have laws that address these issues. Now, if you're going to start assigning, calling an upper or a part of a firearm the firearm itself, how can that be? You're going to have good people that are law-abiding citizens that are going to be saddled with this, that can't exchange in commerce, whether it be a gun part, whether it be a barrel, whether it be an upper, whether it be a lower. Uh, it doesn't matter. They're talking about taking ghost guns off of the streets. I'm sorry, but in my 30 plus years of law enforcement experience, if a bad guy wants a gun, a bad guy's going to get a gun.
Get a gun.
And
Yeah.
it's going to be the law abiding citizens that are going to suffer for this.
Well, here's the thing that I don't get. So currently under the rules, it's the lower that's really defined as the firearm, and thus, at least in traditional commerce and in places like California, where we actually do require serialization of home built firearms, that's what gets serialized is the lower. But now they're saying, so if you have one serial number for your lower and another one for your upper, does that mean you now are in possession of multiple firearms? I mean, how exactly is this supposed to work?
Well, again, the ATF is going to have their own definition of it. They're going to make up their own rules as they go along to what's going to fit them and their narrative on that. And what's law enforcement supposed to do? How are we going to enforce this? If I have two cell phones on me that have two different serial numbers, is that going to be illegal? Or is this just another grab? Are they going to go after restricting firearms by requiring everybody to have tax stamps for uppers and lowers? Is just going to be, we're going to try and price people out of owning firearms or trading in firearms?
Right.
We're now impacting commerce.
Well, and the thing is that I have absolutely no confidence that any of this will be done in any fair manner, because they're going to have their new head of ATF, Waco Dave Chipman, who really is not interested in the right to keep and bear arms. He is an active anti-gun activist, and it's just, anyway, it is scary to think what they're going to do. But folks, this is the reason why we tell you why it was so important to not allow the camel's nose under the tent, because it opens the door for these sorts of abuses of the rules making process. The rules making process is supposed to clarify the law. It's not supposed to redefine the law. And that's what they're attempting to do with these rules making changes.
Yes. And if you look at the history of the ATF, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican, if it's Democrat, wherever they're at, they have made up their own rules. They've interpreted, and if it doesn't match what they want to do, they change the rules again. And we've seen that in the past.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we're gonna be seeing a little bit more of it as the Biden administration continues on. And one of the reasons we're going to see that is, quite frankly, because of the massive surge in spending for gun control. What you have right now is you had a 21% increase in spending by gun control groups. Now, keep in mind, they're already spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on research, on polling. When I say research, I mean they are funding anti-gun groups to do anti-gun research and manipulate data in order to say, hey, this is the reason why we need to ban guns. The other thing that they're quite frankly doing is they're then also spending money polling. They're going places and they're trying to find out what language, what terminology, and what issue can we get those people on the margin, people who believe in the idea of quote unquote common sense gun control or gun laws. If they can, what are the things they can get them to support? And then work to help get people elected, and that's where else they're spending the money, is on candidates, getting candidates elected. In areas where you have someone who's pro-gun versus anti-gun, if they can get the person in, they get the person in. Here's the scary part: if they can go and they can go from someone who's a Democrat who is kind of, well, I don't, guns is not really my thing, but I'll probably vote anti-gun, to someone who is rabidly anti-gun, they'll invest money there as well. So a lot of this money, you're literally seeing lobbying spending by gun control groups rose for the first quarter in 2021 compared to the same period last year. In other words, what they're saying is, folks, we have an opportunity. We cannot let this go to waste. We need to ban guns.
No, it's all about financing the social engineering and driving a message and repeating that message constantly. People who are pro-gun have that belief, and you don't see people pushing it, the pro-gun agenda on somebody who's anti-gun. If you're anti-gun, that's fine. You don't have to have one, but you don't see that on the other side where somebody who is anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment, uh, anti-civil liberties, they're going to keep pushing that agenda, pushing that message, getting it out there, and it's going to turn into rote memory. And then you have
Right.
the people becoming the robots, and they start repeating it. Is, oh, well, I heard, well, I heard, well, I heard. Well, what have you researched? What have you looked at? What's your own experience? And they don't have any.
No, they don't. And it's, they're getting their talking points from Hollywood and from academia, people who know nothing about guns and know nothing about the statistics. And what's funny is when you start going back and try to find out what's the source for your data, for your information, for the stuff that you're putting out there, they can't tell you. They don't know. And they don't really care to know. They don't care to dig in and find out, is what I'm being told the truth? They don't care about that. Because, well, the problem is the truth doesn't fit their narrative, and they're more interested in their narrative than they are the truth.
Yes, and it's funny when you start bringing up facts and statistics and common sense. Why let that get in the way of a good story? If it's going to debunk the truth, and we're going to put that out there, I'm just going to keep repeating it, and I'm going to keep repeating it louder and louder
Right.
until, again, like I said before, your message is drowned out. That's why everybody needs to have a voice in this.
Until I get my way, we're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing the falsehoods. And unfortunately, sadly, guns is not the only place that we're seeing that. We're also seeing that over and over again when it comes to COVID-19. We talked about in the program the other day about the liberal left who can't quit quarantine, who, despite all of the data, all of the facts, and all of the science that tells them that there's things that we should not be doing or that we don't need to be doing. They absolutely positively refuse to follow they've refused to follow the math. They've refused to follow the science and the numbers. In one place is in Washington, D.C., where they just released new COVID standards and guidelines. And one of the interesting things that and I don't know why they bothered to do this, but they have literally included in there a ban on dancing at weddings.
Well, it's really baffling to me, especially being here in Florida, where we've pretty much been open the entire time. We had our bouts with COVID, and we're seeing that the numbers are going down. People are going out there. The governor is trying to prevent some of the control issues that you see the liberal left wanting, such as the mask mandate, having the COVID-19 passport in order to travel, all these different things. And now you have DC and a couple other places that are banning dancing. Why? We can walk through a restaurant with a mask on, but then we can take it off when we sit down. It doesn't make sense. But again, why let common sense and facts and science get in the way of a good story?
So in other words, if I've been quarantining with this person that I've been dancing with, right, my wife of almost 30 years, for some reason I'm not allowed to now dance with my wife. I mean,
because you're going to cause the COVID virus to you're vibrating the air molecules, and it's going to push it around. So it's not necessarily your wife, but it's somebody next to you, and it's going to push that COVID molecule virus over to you, and then you're going to catch it. So that's why we can't dance. It's much like wearing a mask out in public. Well, if I wear a bathing suit, does that mean it's okay to pee in the pool? I mean, it's covered up, right?
Well, it's funny. Like the other day, I noticed, and actually it was interesting. So Jake Tapper not Jake Tapper. It was was it Jake Tapper? Anyway, someone was actually asking a spokesman for the White House, like, why is the president still wearing a mask when he does interviews or press conferences, even though they're socially distanced, right? Even though he's in a room full of people who all have been vaccinated, all have tested negative, all of them are vaccinated. And the response was, at first they said, well, according to new CDC guidelines, if you're in a small group internally and everyone's been vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. And then ask, well, then why does the president wear a mask when everyone around him has been vaccinated and it's a small group and they're socially distancing? And he said, well, the president will continue to follow the CDC guidelines. And I'm like, isn't that a contradiction?
There you go. You're thinking again, and they don't want you thinking.
Well, there you go. You know what's interesting about that is, and that kind of leads me to our parting shot today is, you know, you're right. People don't want people thinking, and part of that has to do with, well, quite frankly, who our president is. You know, it's funny because there are people who are out there thinking, and even people who supported him are thinking. And I was finding it interesting how few people out there who you know and who I know voted for Joe Biden. How very few people out there are talking about what a good job he did. But you know, I think the president has come up with a reason and identified exactly why you're not seeing that. It's because the tech companies, well, they're censoring his followers.
You're seeing people that are being banned from all different social media platforms. If you saw the new demands that Black Lives Matter has sent to the Senate, demanding that President Trump be banned from all social media platforms for life. Any conservatives are banned from social media platforms. They can't get their message out. And they're demanding that they convict President Trump of we don't know what, but they demand that he be convicted and thrown in jail. And again, this is you're not getting, that you're not abiding by their message, so therefore you're wrong.
Well, once again, but you notice they're not talking about what a great job Biden is doing. No one is talking about what a great job Joe Biden is doing. All they're talking about is how bad Trump was. In fact, one of the interesting things is and this was a story that we were going to do. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. But looking at the numbers for just how bad liberal news is right now, how their numbers have just fallen off the charts because they don't have Donald Trump to talk about anymore.
Well, no, they just want to keep beating up or beat the dead horse.
Right.
I've talked to my friends and colleagues that are on the border out in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. It is horrendous what is going on down there. And, it's not a challenge, it's a crisis, and they need to treat it as such. But we're 43, 44 days into this, where the vice president was supposed to handle the crisis at the border, and we've yet to hear anything about it because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Well, see, now there you go. See, clearly, clearly you are not part of the orthodoxy. You're not part of the plan. You're not communicating according to the plan. So therefore, we're going to have to cut you off, which means that's the end to today's episode of The Rundown. Major Bill, it was a pleasure having you on today. Thank you so much for stepping up and stepping in for Mike.
Not a problem. Again, I hope he does better. It's been great talking with you again, Craig. We talk on the radio show, but it's great to do this, and hopefully I can come back on sometime.
We will definitely look forward to having you. Ladies and gentlemen, Major Bill. Folks, remember, subscribe, share, and encourage your friends to do the same. At that point, we're out, and we will talk to you tomorrow on Taco Tuesday. See you later.